Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here, and now we're taking a look at our next wave of the Wreckers and Combaticons comparison. This time around we have Roadbuster and Swindle. Both of whom, of course, were in the Generation 1 era. Swindle was a Combaticon in the original, whereas Roadbuster was one of the deluxe Autobots alongside Whirl. That was purchased from an outside toy company. So Roadbuster's the least known of these two guys, unless you were fortunate enough to have the Generation 1 version. I reviewed him as one of my earlier projects, and I must say, Roadbuster is a pain in the Generation 1 era to get complete. Thankfully, this one, being bought brand new, is nowhere near the trouble. But at any rate, let's take a look at these two and see what we can learn about each of them. First up, we'll take a look here at Swindle. And I must say, just by looking at this one, he is a significant improvement over his Generation 1 counterpart in terms of looks. The G1 version was famous for being very boxy looking, so he really didn't look that great. He had a fantastic vehicle mode nonetheless, but the robot still looked terrible due to the boxy nature of it. This one, however, he'll become a Cybertronian-styled vehicle, so he'll look considerably different this go-around. He's done up in a yellow color, which is sort of close to the tan color that the original one was, or at least it kind of goes with it. It would be a better way of describing it. Another downside, if there's a real downside to Swindle, it's the fact that this time he only comes with one gun. Whereas the original one had two guns, and they could be merged into one. So I gave him kind of some firearm options. This one doesn't seem to have that. But I think we can forgive him for it. Let's take a look at Swindle's articulation now. He and Roadbuster should have the same articulation. You can turn their heads from left to right. And since it's on a specialized joint, it can rock back and forth. It's not a ball joint since we're moving the entire panel that the head is on. The arms can be raised out about so far. And you can rotate the arm at the shoulder all the way. He can bend his arm at the elbow about 90 degrees. And he can swivel at the bicep. So they have G.I. Joe battle grip. You can twist him at the hips. You can spread his legs apart almost into a full splits. You can raise his leg at the hip just about 90 degrees, and he can bend at the knee about 90 degrees. He also does have a swivel in his thigh. And you can shift the ankles for slight posability. Well, you can kind of stand like that at a bit of an angle. But I think that's more for transforming him than anything else. So moving right along here, we'll take a look at his card backer. I kind of like the artwork they've got for him on here. You got a dirty little smile there on his face. And this cheesy looking way they've positioned his hand. Kind of makes him look like a slick used car salesman or something. Which would play into Swindle's character. As you can see here, he becomes a Cybertronian assault transport. which sort of an homage to the original. As the original, he became some sort of Jeep-like vehicle, so yeah, that's pretty close. It was, since it did have the big cannon in the back of it, it would have certainly been an assault vehicle. Let's see what it says here for his bio. It says, to the other Combaticons, the war with the Autobots is an epic clash for the fate of the universe. To Swindle, it's a business opportunity. While his teammates relish the frenzy of destruction they cause as Decepticon Bruticus, Swindle quietly calculates how much he can get for selling all the scrap metal that'll be lying around afterward. And that sort of plays into Swindle's G1 personality. Although more in the G1 era, Swindle was more of an arms dealer than a scrap metal dealer. Swindle was willing to sell weapons to anybody. And if he thought he could get away with it, he would have sold weapons to the Autobots. But he'd have to be real cautious due to the fact that if Onslaught or even Megatron found out he was doing that, he'd be dead where he stood. At any rate, let's take a look at Swindle's tech specs. It gives his strength as 4, his intelligence is 8, his speed is 6, his endurance is 7, his rank is 5, his courage is 4, his fire blast is 5, and his skill is 8. So he is rather skilled and very smart, but he's also rather on the weak side and rather cowardly, which would kind of fit for somebody who's in it more for the money than in it for the belief in victory. Now, let's switch him up and take a look at Roadbuster. Then we'll get these guys into their alternate mode. Now, here we have Roadbuster, and he's something of a departure from the G1 version, but in a good way. Because, frankly, he does not have all those loose parts. Or even worse, all those very tiny loose parts. Like the antenna, the rangefinder, or the missiles. They've done him up in green colors, which I think, if my memory is correct, that was how he was. I think he had some predominant green color scheme when he was featured in Dark of the Moon. Don't quote me on that, it's been a long time since I've seen Dark of the Moon. But the orange color is definitely reminiscent of his G1 counterpart, as is the style for his head. It's very reminiscent of his G1 version. Of course, he has a similar gun to Swindle. As you can see, it's in a different color. And like the other Autobot wreckers, Roadbuster has another gun. Some sort of triple beam blaster. But of course, when you pull it back here on the grip, the front ends of the gun open up, so that I guess it can fire a more powerful blast, I'm guessing. I really don't know what sort of purpose this serves. I've not really seen anything like it, but it's an interesting little mechanism. This is one of those times where I wish Hasbro would include some more lore with the figures so that we could get a better understanding of what they're carrying instead of making a game out of it. At any rate, let's set Roadbuster aside here for a second so we can take a look at his card art. The card art's pretty good. I kind of like it. Kind of gives the impression that Roadbuster here is somebody that's ready to get out and do a fight. That kind of carries over from his G1 days. Becomes an assault transport, and seeing as he was kind of meant to be a futuristic off-road vehicle in the G1 era, this is probably not too far off from it. It says here for his bio, Roadbuster has never been anything but a soldier. When battle rages around him, he acts with a quick certainty that is an inspiration to the other Autobots. But when the guns fall silent, he withdraws into himself. Without a battle to fight, he doesn't know what to do with himself. So what he does is prepare constantly for the next fight. Or he goes out and picks one. Which again, this does carry over from the G1. Roadbuster was the kind of character that he knew anything and everything to do with being in a fight or being in battle. But when he didn't have one to be involved in, he was kind of a shy and quiet character. So it's nice to see that that's carried over a bit. And it's probably an attitude that helps serve him well as being a wrecker. Since his leader, Impactor, knows that if they're sent out on a mission, it is one that is extremely dangerous, and failure is not an option. Having somebody like Roadbuster on your team for it would certainly make that go a little easier. Alright, now we're going to come get these two guys put into their alternate modes and take a look at how those turn out. Alright, here we are in Cybertronian assault transport modes. And I gotta say, they at least give off some impression. Of course, it's hard to define locations for them on it, since, after all, as it's a robot vehicle, there's no need for a pilot's seat. So for Roadbuster here, I stacked both guns on him. Since, let's face it, Roadbuster, if he had the choice, he'd have every gun he could get his hands on mounted on here. Whereas Swindle here just has the one. Now the downside to them is rolling on the table. The front wheels roll very good. It's the back wheels that don't. Because you see in the alternate mode, the hands are stuck right against the wheels. So the back wheels will turn, but they're going to brush up against the hands all the time. So, definitely don't want to recommend these two guys for younger children. As those that don't really understand that's why the wheels don't work will constantly be jamming them into it. Now, of course, a slight alteration would be to bend the elbows a bit more, and then that gives the back wheels clearance. Let's see how that works now that we got Swindle's arms out of the way, and hey, that's pretty good. That's pretty good there. Slight alteration to the positioning of things. Let's hear Roadbuster real quick. I'm just dying to see how if that works too for him. There we go. That's the way it's done. That's the problem with a lot of these modern instructions. They're not exactly as clear as they should be. So it does tend to lead one to do some self-discovery. Now we get down to my thoughts. What do I think of them? Again, it's nice to see these classic characters to be brought back into the world of the Transformers. Roadbuster especially, as, let's face it, he didn't get the chance to appear in a lot of the media due to his toy not being a Takara-made toy. So it's nice to see a new version of him that can be brought into the fold. and is considerably easier to play with. But all in all, best one out of them, I'm going to have to go with Swindle. Swindle definitely gets an improvement over how he looks compared to the G1 version. So this less boxy looking vehicle and robot mode certainly gets the top marks. Of course, before I close out, I also remembered that I forgot to show off the Roadbuster specs, so let's do that real quick. Roadbuster's strength is 7, his intelligence is 8, his speed is 6, his endurance is 8, his rank is 7, his courage is 8, his fire blast is 7, and his skill is 8. So, Roadbuster is an above-average warrior, which is about what you would expect for him. I do apologize for that slight error, having to do things differently thanks to the pandemic and home quarantine, making things a little crazy around here. I do hope you'll forgive me for it. At any rate, that's my review of the Fall of Cybertron versions of Roadbuster and Swindle. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you liked the videos, please drop me a thumbs up on YouTube. New to the channel, hit that subscribe button down below and join our ranks. Plus also ring the bell so you'll be notified when I post new content. Share this video with your friends and share your thoughts about Roadbuster and Swindle in the comments down below. This is Sparkster1701 saying we got one more set of comparisons to do before we merge these guys into the combined form. So I'll catch you all later.